Today there's not many Jews in China, most fled when the communists took power, but there used to be a large Jewish community in Shanghai. One reason for this is that the Japanese in World War II, unlike their allies, didn't persecute them. In fact, they accepted about 20,000 Jewish refugees into Shanghai. They had to live in a ghetto, but they suffered very little. In fact, in terms of numbers, Japan was one of the most welcoming nations in the world at the time. Going further back, after China was opened up after the Opium Wars, many Jews came to settle in Shanghai, and some made a great deal of money, like the Sassoon family, for example. They were soon joined by some Russian Jews who were escaping religious persecution, and by and large they got on fine with the Chinese during this period. Now the Sassoons and the likes may well have entered China shortly after a centuries-old Jewish community died out. Now these were the Kaifeng Jews. They were once a very important group in a once very important city, not too far from where I am now. But before I go on, some people have called into question whether or not they actually followed any Jewish customs and practices. One of the major breaks from tradition is that their religion is passed down their paternal line as opposed to the traditional maternal line. So in China they were given surnames like Jin, Gao and Shi, but if they want to move to Israel they actually have to convert first. But they did have a synagogue which was supposedly built in the 12th century. They ate kosher food and had kosher restaurants which apparently weeded out the Mongols. And according to the first European to find them, Matteo Ricci, in the early 17th century, there was about 50 to 100 families living within this community. But the origins of the community remain disputed. People agree that they came over in the 11th century as merchants from Persia and India. But the Jews themselves, or some of them, claim that they arrived in the ancient Han Dynasty, and there was a document found in northwest China that had Jewish text on that dates back to the 8th century. But most of what we know of them comes from their sources that were written in the 15th century, and that's because the Chinese didn't differentiate between Muslims and Jews, so it's hard to tell which they're talking about. But we do know that Jews existed in other cities like Hangzhou, for instance, on the coast. But shortly after Matteo Ricci discovered them, a great flood hit Kaifeng, and the city, as well as most of the communities, wiped out. It lingered on for a couple of centuries, but over time the Jews started learning Chinese texts over Jewish texts in order to pass the imperial exams. So in 1810, when a rabbi died, there was no one left to read the Torah, so they had no rabbi. And then another flood hit and the community pretty much died. So although the synagogue has been destroyed, I think a hospital stands in its place now. A lot of Jews still live in Kaifeng, in the old Jewish quarter. But they're not recognized by the international community as being Jewish.